Order online at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. Jake Mikey here, joined by my co-host, as always, Mike Bunt, and making his official Trainwreck Sports debut, Ajay Cybulski. How are we doing tonight, gents? AJ, let's start with you. How are you feeling your first day aboard the train here at Trainwreck Sports? It is so great to have you here, and it's great to have you on the Pay the Bills podcast here on June 3rd. How are we doing?
Good. Yeah, it's been I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to this. Across the multitude of podcasts I do, the content I come up with, obviously excited for the actual seasons themselves. So we have a bit more to talk about, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Took a little bit of a hiatus after kind of really grinding for this kind of path in my life. Like if, that's what was my goal. And then now it's switched up and now I'm going to be teach for childhood ed and I'm doing that as well. So I wanted to keep this in my life and I felt like Trainwreck was the best fit and I'm really looking forward to it. I know a lot about the group. I like how much you guys do for the community. And I think that this little jive here, I know Mike pretty well, Jake. I've listened to you multiple times, very intelligent human being that's very relaxed. So I think we'll get a good, chemistry going here and it'll be a fun time.
We're excited to have you, AJ. And the best part is now I get to humble you on a week-by-week basis on this show. So I'm looking forward to that. We have a lot of good talks off camera, and now we get to put that on camera. So looking forward to bringing the heat on a weekly basis. And Jake, I just hope you know what you're in for. This might be a relatively tame episode, but it's going to get crazy between me and AJ at some points here. And hopefully he can admit that once in a while I can make a good point.
We'll see.
We'll see about that, Mike. I mean, you're talking a little crazy here on June 3rd. But listen, if my brother and my dad are watching, and if anybody knows the Micah family, I'm more than ready for you two arguing here, and I'm really excited about it. Actually, I think this is going to be. I'm very excited about this new addition here. I'm really excited about you being here, AJ. The dynamic that we'll bring to this show specifically, but also just Trainwreck Sports as a whole. Everything that we do, like you said, there's so much more to it than just this show, and we're excited to have you just a part of the team, doing everything, being with the guys and girls that we got going on here. And yeah, as you said, like we're kind of in as we're sitting here, as I said, June 3rd, we're going into the dark ages, as I call them. The final, we got no basketball, no hockey again tonight, only baseball, WNBA, some tennis if you were earlier in the day. The NBA finals and Stanley Cup finals start this week, but then it's basically the countdown to training camp. And so we are kind of in that period of just waiting for football season at this point, especially in Western New York. And so it was a kind of a perfect opportunity today. It's the second week of OTAs. Josh Allen isn't even there. He's off, who knows, probably Italy or some island somewhere. Who knows where he is. But with AJ joining along today, OTAs kind of still not in kind of the same place they were last week. Not many big updates, no big roster changes or everything. We're going to use today as an opportunity to kind of look at the last 4 or 5 months of Bills moves, of everything they've done since the final whistle of that AFC Championship game. And how do we feel? Like, are we feeling more optimistic, less optimistic, about the same? So it's kind of just going to be a broad offseason recap today. And so I want to start with you, AJ, because this is your first time here. Mike and I have talked. And AJ, you've jumped on, and shout out to AJ. He's been great in the comments along. Like, this is like, if you watched along to this show, great engagement this whole time. So we know some of your thoughts here. But Mike and I have talked a lot about how we feel about the Bills offseason move. So where are you at from a big picture, like up in the sky level of what they've done so far from the end of the season up until now? Are you happy with it? Are you wanting more? Like, just where's your head at right now?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with what they've done. I'm not really looking for more at this point. I think if they are they more ready for a Super Bowl this year? Are they more prepared to make that run? It's like a two-pronged question because you can look at it two ways. I think if you look at it one way, I think now that, we've seen it from a fan and covering the team at that level and what they had last year, I don't think there were really much that high of expectations, right? There was a lot of conversations about this team taking a step back, and then they proved that they could have won probably 14 games last year, 15 games if they, played their starters that last week. So I think it's interesting because the dynamic has now changed. I have more confidence in this group to make a run, and they took a step forward in terms of that. But in the same sentence, I don't feel more confident because they still got to get by the Chiefs. So I think that's where it's kind of a two-pronged kind of thing that we got to discuss.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. Are they closer to a Super Bowl? We really don't know until the playoffs happen and take place, because nothing that happens in the regular season, short of making the playoffs, really means anything at this point in time. The Bills could go 17-0. If they lose to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, then they're not any closer to getting to a Super Bowl. I think this roster is better. I think they're a year more experienced than what they were last year. They have better weapons. We can talk about that at some point, AJ. I think we want to talk about our thoughts on the receiver room. It's a conversation me and Partham have had some fun with, but I want to see how, AJ, what you say on air when we talk about it. But you look at the defense, the defensive line is better. The secondary is better. So if you're just saying talent-wise, roster-wise, this team is closer to being a Super Bowl team. But if you ask me, what does that mean come playoff time? It means absolutely nothing. As AJ said, you got to get past the Chiefs. You have to get past that hurdle before anybody can really declare anything. And so that's something that we're not going to know in June or July. So I do think they're closer, but I can't really say anything definitively.
Yeah, that's very measured takes from both of you. I was expecting some fire right from the start, but you guys came with exactly where I'm at. We don't know. Do I feel better? Ultimately, though, big picture, yeah, I think they're from talent level, from where their floor was last year and where their ceiling was last year compared to this year's roster right now. I think it's an improvement on both of those things, just because last year was stripped down to the pegs. And I went into this offseason being like, whatever they add, it's going to be additive, because they really were down to it last year. And then they added some good pieces, depending on your mileage on a Josh Palmer or the various defensive line, stabs they took in free agency or any of the draft, capital that they added to this team. I thought anything to add to this roster would be good, because they were so stripped down last year with the cap and everything they did with those moves. So I'm feeling pretty good. And I was surprised, if we're just talking big picture of the outcome of last season, happy to be there is not how you want to talk about this team being in the AFC Championship. But I wasn't expecting an AFC Championship, even going into that Ravens game. How worried were we, Mike, going into that Ravens game? So being positioned better going into the season than you were last season after the outcome, you have to feel good. But you guys both made the points. Nothing's guaranteed in this league. We won't know until we see it on the field. And it's not like there was an earth-shattering move that you can point to that's okay, this team's clearly better. We're hoping for a lot of improvement for a lot of things too, I feel like, AJ, right? Is there a direct go ahead, jump on it.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I'm looking at the offensive side of the ball, and I think there's 4 guarantees if everyone stays healthy on the offensive side of the ball, right? You have the running back, James Cook. I think he's a guarantee with him, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. Let's just say the running back room is a guaranteed. You feel very good about that, right? You feel very good about your quarterback, Josh Allen. You feel really good about your offensive line. So there's 3 things. And the 4th player or thing is Khalil Shakir. Now, what you're hoping is Josh Palmer works out, right? What you're hoping is that Curtis Samuel can kind of return to that form of Washington. Even, what we saw later in the year, I know a lot of fans liked it. I still want to see more from Curtis Samuel. I know he came on a little bit at the end of the year, but I still think there's more in the tank, and hopefully maybe a healthier season will help that. Dalton Kincaid, we're hoping, right? Keon Coleman, we're hoping. Dawson Knox, he kind of is what he is at this point. We kind of know his role. He's a blocker, red zone target. That's that. But I think Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer are really the 3 big names that we're hoping to see improve on this offense. And I think, again, they've done a good job, filling the positions. They added Josh Palmer. They attacked some weapons on offense. And then defensively, they took a flyer on Joey Bosa, which you're not really going to do much when you're, against the cap like that. I think you had to take kind of a flyer on a guy that had some injury concerns, but has some pop. And, you need him in January, and let's see what he can do, take another risk. I love the Ojinobi and Hoyt signings after week 6. We'll see how they can kind of jive into this. And then obviously in the draft, they did a great job of addressing cornerback 2 with Maxwell Hairston. They added Trey White and Dane Jackson to that room to kind of give open competition, which I think Babbage said today in the press conference at OTAs. He said a wide open competition there, which I think we all expected. And I like the kind of, rejuvenation of the interior with the 2 draft picks in, I'm blanking on their names, TJ Sanders, correct? TJ Sanders and
Yes.
Deion Walker, the 2 guys up there. Deion Walker was supposed to be a first-round pick, and then he decided to stay in school another year, had back issues, and kind of fell. So I like what they've done in terms of on paper. And I think that defensively, they've made some really quality additions. Offense, again, 4 guarantees, and then we're hoping, and I think some are expecting to see elite from Coleman, Kincaid, and even a Curtis Samuel in that aspect.
Yeah, it is. There definitely is some hoping that certain groups are going to elevate their play this year. And depending on who you talk to, glass half full, glass half empty people, you're going to get different reactions to certain positional groups. The main 2 obviously being wide receiver and defensive line. I would love to have a wide receiver talk at some point, because I think this unit is actually pretty decent, but I'm told by a lot of people that it's a bottom 10 unit in the league. But we can do that now, or we can do that another time. And then defensive line is obviously a big one too, with a lot of free agents, 2 suspended, another one with an injury concern history, a couple rookies. So yes, you invested heavily in the defensive line. You have no idea how that's going to work out. You hope it figures itself out, but it's not a guarantee this defensive line is going to be great or even good. There's a lot of variables that have to fit together properly. And obviously Bills fans were going to normally take the positive side of it, but there's negative outcomes that can happen as well. But what I would say is obviously those are the 2 groups that are going to have the biggest impact on what the Bills' ceiling versus what their floor is this season, outside of a Josh Allen injury or anything like that.
Yeah. I want to add linebacker real quick. I was just going to say, I think, I don't know this, but Matt Milano into his 30s, I'm really confident in Dorian Williams. I've only seen him progress, and he had a good day at OTAs. Alex Brasky wrote about that over at the Batavia Daily News about how he just played well. So I think they have good depth there. And again, yeah, Mike's right. The defensive line, you don't have an idea, right? We get excited every year. The Von Miller signing was really exciting, right? We got excited for that. And that obviously wasn't the Bills' fault. That was football's fault. And that's just kind of how that happens. But I think they have, the assets they put on the defensive line with Brandon Beane is definitely very strong compared to the wide receiver position. Again, we'll get to that later. But he's really, put a lot of assets in the defensive line, continues to restock, try and get these guys, more aggressive in the draft this year too. Taking 2 of them, which some fans thought was crazy, but I really liked. I wanted them to double dip, kind of get a smaller Ed Oliver type. And then Deion Walker, although they say he's not, a kind of a 3-tech, he can play kind of both positions. He's versatile. So I like both draft picks. And again, I think they have some promise on the defensive side of the ball, some youth. And then they took a couple flyers on Joey Bosa, Ojinobi, Hoyt. We'll see what they can kind of become.
It is a great point about the defensive line, though, because you heard me last year. I was at the beginning of the season. I'm like, this could be an elite unit. This is the year. It's time, and they never put that together. I told you
you were too high.
I know. You warned me, and I really banked on a lot of this hope. That's why I'm worried about this, because I banked on, Rousseau and Oliver are probably going to take another step, and that might it was really more on Rousseau as much as anything. Rousseau he's going to be a superstar this year. It's time. And so that's what worries me about the wide receiver situation and everything else. But this D line, it is the same thing with the D line. We aren't going to know. It's a lot of unknowns when it comes to Bosa, when it comes to what will Oliver's production look like next to these other guys on the D line, this new infusion of talent. Will it help him? Is he still going to have too much responsibility? So it is a lot of questions. I'm with you on Dorian Williams. And I think, I really think the Bills fans need to give McDermott and Babbage more credit for the fact that they're going to use the talent they have available to them in the best way possible. And that comes to the safety position, and that comes to the linebacker position, where everybody's like, well, what are you going to do? How are Williams, Bernard, and Milano going to get snaps? And how are you going to keep Hamlin and Rapp and Bishop and have, Forrest and all these, whatever? I think they're going to use all of them in all different sorts of ways. I think that it's going to be the sum of the parts are greater than the, whatever the piece, or I don't know how that word. I've never understood that saying. I don't know why I tried to say it right now, but you guys know what I'm saying here. That's how this defense has always been. And I feel like they have so many pieces on this defense where it's a guy who's not a complete player, but it's a guy who does one thing really well. And I trust Sean McDermott to be able to use those pieces. They have more depth than they've had in a lot of years. And I think that's where, when I'm talking about the fact that they just adding to this roster this offseason was going to be a net positive no matter who it was, it's those depth options, because McDermott is going to he's one game, Michael Hoyt's going to have 70% of the snaps. The next he's going to have 25. I feel like those are the types of things we're going to see with the guys that they have, if they're healthy, that I think that they can use with this defense, that I'm excited to see them come up with. So we'll see what happens there. But we guys have been teasing this wide receiver discussion, conversation, whatever you want to call it. So AJ, a bottom 10 group, is that a true statement?
Talent wise, production wise in the NFL, bottom 10. Yeah.
Bottom 10.
And
that's below them. Who's below them?
Okay. And that's okay. I would have to actually look.
Okay.
I don't know bottom 10. I would say bottom 60. I would say not top 16. This wide receiver group. And I say that because they don't have, if you look around the league, you got Eagles, I could go on, and I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to stick to the point. With this team, the Bills and Brandon Beane, post Stephon Diggs, because they spent some assets there with Emmanuel Sanders. They brought in on a mediocre contract, and they added, a Dalton Kincaid to try and pair with Diggs before he left. So I think there's some hope that this offense with this offensive line and Josh Allen can kind of just nurture itself, right? They have the bodies, they have the people, and Josh Palmer's not a bum. Like, 3rd-round pick, he produced in LA, but by no means is he, was he ever a top option? Did he ever get a chance or an opportunity to move up that depth chart over there? And I know he got behind some good guys, but same with Curtis Samuel. He was kind of an average to above average guy in Washington at times, and had his moments, but that's okay. Like, I think that's where, like, me and Mike might differ. I don't know if that's where we differentiate, or he's just higher on the group and all, but I think that when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, who's on a contract of that stature, you can't do what you maybe want to do with the wide receiver. So yes, they do have a bottom 10 group. Yes, they have not put the assets into the wide receiver position that other teams in the NFL have done. You're seeing it year in, year out. The Jags have put, tons of assets into the position to try and help Trevor Lawrence. The Eagles, Bengals, Chiefs have spent, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, 2 first-round picks. So I think they've done enough, right? They're still a great offense. They're elite, one of the best in the league. But I think that more has to do with Joe Brady delegating those roles, understanding what, these players need to do, using them to their strengths, which he was really good at in Carolina, and having a great offensive line that can protect Allen, allow him to skate the pocket when needed, and allow those plays to develop. And I think that's why you don't need to put a lot of assets into the wide receiver position. But at the same point, the Bills have not put the amount of assets into the wide receiver position that other teams have across the league.
So this is an interesting conversation, because you can word it a lot of different ways, and you can go around and say a lot of different things. At the end of the day, is it an adequate group for the quarterback they have and the offense they're running? It's perfectly fine receiver group. I don't think it's a bottom 10 unit talent wise. So I would differ with AJ on that. Do I think it's a top 10 unit? I don't think that either. It's a lot of number 2s. It's a lot of guys
When was Josh Palmer ever a number 2?
Okay. He had a season with 72 catches.
When was Curtis Samuel ever a number 2?
Okay. You want to call them 3s, that's fine. You want to say borderline 2, 3, whatever. The Bills have 6 players on their team that have had 60 catches in a season. That is not an easy number to get to. Shakir has had 80 plus before. Palmer's had 70 plus before. You have Moore that has had 60 plus. You have a bunch of different guys on this team that have had success. Curtis Samuel, 60 plus. I'll say Chenault very quietly. He's had 60 plus. Dalton Kincaid has had 70 plus. They have 6 guys that have had 60 plus catches in the NFL. I don't want to.
I was wondering where 6 came from. I was like, who's this? Who's
yeah, people don't think about Shenault because you're probably not going to make the team. But here's the thing, and Jake, you know how I stand more with receiver rooms. A lot of fans look at it as, do they have that top guy? Do they have that prima donna number 1, that Stephon Diggs, that Jamar Chase, that Justin Jefferson? No, the Bills don't have that. Would it be nice if they had that? Yeah. But would we be loving paying a combined $90 million plus to a quarterback and 1 receiver? Probably not. And when you're looking at what they're paying for Palmer, Shakir, and Keon at the moment combined, you're getting 3 guys at receiver with a quarterback, and they're going to get adequate production because you have a diversity of skill sets. You have a Shakir, who I think is developing into one of the top slot receivers in the NFL. You have a Josh Palmer, who is a vertical threat, who the Bills believe there was a lot of untapped potential to elevate his game in Buffalo, and that's why they're paying him what they're paying him. They think that Herbert and the Chargers missed him on several routes last year and that there was unearned, there was yardage there to be gained. Keon, they invest a second-round pick in him. He's a high-potential guy. Will he ever be a star in the NFL? I don't think so. But is he going to be a good player? I still believe that. I don't think you average 19.2 yards per reception in a rookie season by accident. So I believe in Keon. The difference is everybody is used to the Bills needing separators like Diggs and Beasley, who's wide open. Keon isn't going to be that. Keon, you throw the ball, you hope he gets yards after the catch. He's a guy that you're going to throw jump balls to. Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, both of those guys, they're your number 4 receiver. That's a good number 4 receiver battle to have. And then after that, Laviska Shenault, like if he even makes the team, whatever. I like Tyrell Shavers on the practice squad. You have KJ Hamler on the practice squad as well. This is a very average receiver room, which is maybe a slightly better. I don't know. I don't want to say better evaluation, but slightly higher on them than what you're saying, AJ. But at the end of the day, it's more than enough for Josh Allen. And if having an average room lets you put resources in fixing the defense, that was what was more important to them this offseason. And I really do think some of these guys might be better than what fans think. I am higher on Josh Palmer than most, and I'm probably lower on Elijah Moore than most, which means I'm probably going to be wrong on both of those points, and then we'll laugh at me a year from now when neither of them are number 2 or 3 receivers on the Bills.
Yeah, I think also like team building, right? Like plays a major role. Like if you look at the division, Tua tried to prove himself. They got Waddle and Tyreek Hill. New England, Stephon Diggs, they just signed. They added Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne. So they have a pretty solid room. The Jets had Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard. They traded for Devontae Adams. So I think with where the Bills are at philosophy-wise, it makes sense as to why the receivers they have in their room right now can work and probably will work for this offense. But at the same time, you can't pretend or deny that fans do have a point and should be able to validate that point by saying that the teams that are winning, like the Eagles have Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. The Chiefs have spent a lot of, equity into the receiver position. The Bengals, the Ravens actually haven't done a great job of that. And they've fallen short. So I think you have kind of a thing where you're seeing all these teams with stud receivers go further and, you're following the Chiefs every year and then you just kind of find something to blame. And that's why I think fans do have a fair opinion when you look at saying they have not put the proper assets into the position. Now, does it really ultimately matter at the end of the day? No. But I get why fans think and feel that way.
But fans also get enamored with guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and they think that that's attainable for every organization. That's why we got in all these fights about Gabe Davis when he had his 800-plus yard season because fans were saying Gabe Davis was a bad number 2 receiver when statistically he was in the top half of number 2 receivers in the NFL. But people were comparing him to number 2 receivers that were really number 1 receivers. Now, what did Gabe Davis do without Josh Allen? He looked like crap. So a lot of people are going to make points basically saying, well, if you get a guy like Elijah Moore in Buffalo and he had crap quarterbacks throwing to him, that suddenly he's going to go off with Josh Allen. But we saw Curtis Samuel come into Buffalo and not elevate his game. Yes, he had turf toe, but we've also had other receivers come to Buffalo and not have that elevated performance. Yes, there's been guys like Cole Beasley and John Brown and Stephon Diggs that have gone off. But there's also been other receivers that have come to Buffalo that really didn't do necessarily what we all thought they would do. So what's more important is what their role is. So a lot of people are using the point Elijah Moore is going to be so much better in Buffalo because he is now with Josh Allen. Well, the fact of it is Elijah Moore was a number 2 receiver in Cleveland who had over 100 targets the last 2 years. Now he's in a battle for the number 3 or number 4 receiver on the Bills. Not even a guarantee to make the roster. I do expect him to make it, but he's competing with Curtis Samuel. How are his numbers going to be better? His numbers likely are going to go down. The only way they really get better is if somehow he wins a number 3 spot and ends up getting a bigger role than what is currently set for him. And then maybe he can have enhanced performance. But a lot of the fan logic doesn't line up. The Bills went to the everyone eats last year because they had no choice. They literally had no choice. They didn't have the salary cap room. Curtis Samuel was the only person they could really afford. But you look at what they have this year, this is a better version of everyone eats. Last year, they didn't have speed on the outside. They had 2 big guys that had no speed and separation ability in Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman. Inside, you had Khalil Shakir, and then Curtis Samuel was a bust. This year, I'm looking at this offense. You do have Josh Palmer to the outside. You do have Elijah Moore who can go inside, outside. So while I do understand some fans might be like, okay, this unit lacks a star, I do think this unit is much improved over what we saw last year overall. Now, have they invested premium assets? No, they really haven't. They haven't gotten a big money guy, $20 million plus. But I would argue the 33rd overall pick is a pretty big asset. It's not a top 10 pick, but it's still a top 40 pick on a receiver. That's something decent. Spending 10 plus million on Josh Palmer, that is something decent. So while some fans will say they haven't invested in receiver, that's a flat out lie. They have invested in receiver. They just haven't invested the maximum high level assets in receiver, but they have definitely invested good value in receivers. And they even gave up a 3rd round pick for Amari Cooper last year, which shows that they are willing to do moves. They just don't want to go all the way in with a massive blockbuster type move.
Which shows that they did not have enough assets at the position to feel comfortable with the assets they allocated to the wide receiver position. So they had to trade for Amari Cooper. And
I'm not arguing that. I agree with you on that. But that's a different.
We agree to disagree. My point is
last year's group was a bottom 5 receiver room. That is a bad group. I would make the argument this group.
It's better. It is better than last year on paper. On paper, yeah. Because you're expecting an improvement from Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir should only. I mean, he's hitting his prime of his career, right? And he's just developed chemistry. So I get it's better. But I still get why fans are upset with the overall allocation of assets to the position since Stephon Diggs.
Palmer is the ultimate wild card here. And I think I feel like we all have our very strong opinions on him probably, and none of us probably really know. I think that he's for my word, Josh Palmer has been a fantasy darling at least the last couple of years. That's how I've known him as, where he's always been like a guy where you could see late rounds like, oh, maybe this is the year that Palmer kind of goes off with Herbert. And like you said, Bunt, it never really clicked with Herbert, and maybe it was a Herbert thing, but maybe not. But if it's ever going to work with him, if the skills are there, which the Bills think are there, it's going to work with Allen. Like that's Allen's. I'm not worried about here's the thing when it comes to the wide receiver room is you guys both make great points. For me, I think Bean looked at it as I can pay an elite receiver room and an elite O-line room with the way I want to set up this team. And he paid the O-line. And they have an elite top 5 offensive line. And if I were building the team, I'm okay with that. And so the repercussions of that are you don't get a Stephon Diggs or you don't get to play around in the DK Metcalf sweepstakes and those types of things. And that is, it can harm your team. I'm not saying this. It's definitely a spot where you definitely want one of those guys when it's week 15 and you're down by 10 and no one's getting open at the end of the game. And there's those things, but you hope that your offensive line and the way the Bills won games. I said it a lot on the pod last year as they were going through the year. They were just wearing teams out. Like they were like it would be they'd be in these close games in the first half. You're like, what the hell is going on? I'd be like, all right, the Bills are going to lean on them and they're going to just take over. And that's what that offensive line allowed them to do. And I think they fell in love with that. And it's going to still be the identity of this team. But Palmer, going back to the room though, the Palmer thing is just a wild card because I do think it depends. Your mileage varies on Justin Herbert at this point, right? Like Justin Herbert, a lot of fanfare. He's very, a lot of potential. But it hasn't been able to put it together. At what point is the limitations him and what point is it the receivers in the situation he's been in? So I'm just excited to see Palmer in this situation. I think he could be a huge boom or it could be something where it's not as poor as Samuel last year because Samuel had some injuries and everything else, but it's more of a muted thing where he's not getting targets. He's getting 35 catches instead next year. And people are like, why the hell did we pay that guy? Even if they're winning games and everything else. So I see both sides of it.
And we have to acknowledge something. Justin Herbert, the last 2 years, he had 504 attempts this year. He had 456 the year before when he missed 4 games. The years before that, 699, 672, 595. The Chargers haven't been passing the ball as much in the last year. They went down dramatically in their passing. They became more of a running team. Josh Palmer is 25 years old. So, and I get there's some question about his production. As a rookie, 33 receptions, 353. Like, that's not much as a rookie. But you look at his second year in the league as a 23-year-old on a team that had, I believe, Mike Williams still and Keenan Allen. He had 72 receptions for 769 yards and 3 touchdowns in his second year in the NFL. His third year in the league, everybody's talking about how he catches like 30 to 40 balls. He had 38 catches for 581. But you want to know something? He missed 7 games that year. So he had 38 catches in 10 games. If you do that for a 17-game season, he would have been on pace for about 66, 67 catches, and he would have been on pace for over 900 yards. So literally you have a second year total where he has 72 for 769 and he missed a game. And you have a third year where if he had a 17-game season, he would have been on pace for close to 70 catches for 900 plus yards. And then even last year, which went down because the pass attempts on the Chargers went dramatically down with Harbaugh as head coach. He had 39 receptions and he did miss 2 games. You add in another 2 games of production, you're talking about 43 to 45 receptions for close to 680, 690 yards. So I don't get where all of this talk is that Josh Palmer isn't some good receiver. Josh Palmer is already statistically a very solid receiver. If anything, the last 2 years you can point to, 1 year he missed almost half the season, and last year they changed the entire offense. And he was also behind valuable receivers early on in his career. So there was always this thought process that he was going to take his game to another level, and it never necessarily happened in LA. So I'm not going to say that like Palmer suddenly is going to be a star in Buffalo, but how crazy is it to think that a 25-year-old receiver who technically has better per game stats than what people realize can't come to Buffalo, fill the role that the Bills are looking for him to do, and put up good numbers? I think Palmer in Buffalo is a 50-plus catch, 800-plus yard guy. And I think fans are talking about him like he's some 35 to 40 catch guy who's going to get 500 yards. Palmer is already the number 2 receiver on the Bills today. He is the number 2 receiver. People are talking like, oh, he's a solid 3 or something like that. He's not the 3. He's ahead of Coleman, and he is better than Moore. The money speaks. Palmer got signed right away by the Bills. They did not waste much time trying to bring him in. That shows that they prioritized him and they valued him. If they didn't value or prioritize him, they wouldn't have given him the money, even if it was an overpay. That's why the same should be said for the opposite with Elijah Moore. They didn't sign him until after the draft. If they would have found a receiver they liked in the 3rd, 4th round, Elijah Moore is not even a Buffalo Bill today. And then 31 other teams didn't sign him either. And he only got $5 million, up to $5 million to come in Buffalo. Deontay Hardy was getting paid up to $4 million to come to Buffalo. Curtis Samuel is making $8 million in Buffalo. I don't get this love affair with Elijah Moore just because he's coming off 2 seasons with nearly 60 catches. Does he have a lot of potential? Yes. That's why he was a 2nd-round pick. But the Jets got rid of him after 2 years. A team that needs receivers, a team that can't pass the ball, was like, we're going to move on from you. And then he goes to another team that can't pass the ball, that needs receivers. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to give you that much money. So 2 teams in desperate need of improving their passing attacks, improving their receivers, we're like, all right, whatever, you can go. And then us as Bills fans are being enamored by this guy. It just does not make sense. It doesn't. It's not rational. And anybody that is rational should get their brains checked if they think that Elijah Moore is going to be the next coming of whatever they think he is, because he's going to be a good player. Elijah Moore is a good player, but he's not going to have 75 plus catches for 1,000 yards or any of this crap that Bills fans think he's going to be. If anything, he's fighting with Curtis Samuel just to make this team.
Yeah, 2 things quick, and then Jake, I just want to wrap up. You said money speaks. Money speaks in free agency, but not in January, hence Matt Collins and Curtis Samuel. And then 2, what was my second point? Oh yeah, going into trust, like that's another argument for like the people that say like, and maybe that can be Khalil Shakir, but they haven't proven that yet. Like the Bills' offense has had the ball in the playoffs the last 2 years, and they have not had a guy make a play. Right, Josh Allen's delivered the ball to Dalton Kincaid. That was kind of a hero ball. I don't really blame Kincaid as much as some, but he still could have made the play, and it was right in his hands. And then like the year before that was kind of just Deion Dawkins not holding his block 0.1 seconds long enough where Allen got hit and the ball fell short to Shakir. So I think that's also like the fallacy about having that like wide receiver one. Like when you have like a premium asset at that position and there's such slim margins at that playoff level, who's that guy for the Bills that can step up and prove, right, that Josh Allen trusts to be that guy? Because we've yet to see that. Gabe Davis has been really the only guy in my mind that has proven himself that Josh can feel comfortable with him in the big moment, hence the 13-second game. So, and that's a crazy statement.
You want to say that again? So, can you want to say that again so the Gabe Davis haters can hit the dislike button? On us?
Yeah. But that's just my point. Like they also like for the people that say like they should spend more in the wide receiver position. When it comes down to it, with slim margins, when you're going to be in a one score game with the Chiefs every single year in the playoffs, who's that guy that can get open and catch the ball? Shout out to Allen and Diggs' old saying, and just do it. And then I think that's another important part of this.
Well, isn't that a problem, AJ? Like Stephon Diggs was supposed to be that guy, and all year he was that guy. And every time in the playoffs he would go up against Kansas City, he would do absolutely nothing. So like there is a little bit of like that's kind of I know what you're saying, and I agree with it. But that's kind of something that like we say as fans, but it doesn't always match up with reality. Like
same with money speaks, it doesn't match up with reality. I mean, we saw it, Mike.
Breaking news: AJ is fired from Trainwreck.
Yeah. All right, we can move on from this, man. I'm good. I'm all set.
Keep it going.
It's a great discussion to have though, because the asset allocation it's a very nuanced conversation. I feel like I feel like Mike and I have been like trying to like educate people on the run as like what like rebuilding a contender on the fly actually is, because none of us really have seen it before, right? Like that's the thing. Right. This generation of Bills fan has never seen a team try to keep a contender together. We've never been a part of an organization that A, had been even up to this precipice, but B, been there for a while and now trying to find ways to not just stay, but break through. Like it's hard to do in the NFL. And I just want to like, the Bills deserve a lot of credit for being able to do it, and I'm impressed with the way they're balancing the tightrope. But it's fair to wonder about how they've built this team, and just looking at past Brandon Beane or Panthers teams and everything else, like all these questions are things that have happened for 10 years now with these types of teams. So I don't think they can't win with this group to put a bow on it. But do I have the same worry that you have, AJ, about a big moment in a late game? And Mike and I have talked about all the time that the reason the Bills lose these games is not because they're not good enough. It's because they can't do the little things right in these moments. Yeah, I lose sleep over it thinking about that. But I do think this group is much better positioned to make a play or be available to make a play than the group was last year. And that's the confidence I'll go into next year with.
Totally fair point.
I spiked my mouse off my desk, but we'll go off of that. And so let's wrap up here the last couple minutes with let's look forward a little bit. And I'll start with you, AJ. What do you expect for the rest of this summer? Do you expect any more moves? What do you expect? And you can take this any which way. Any more moves? What do you expect out of some of the big competitions in camp? Are you excited for Hard Knocks? Our guy Carson said he is fired up for Hard Knocks. So that's some of the fan base is really looking forward to just seeing that. What are you looking forward to the most, Bills summer, as a training camp comes up in about 6 weeks?
Yeah, the thing I'm most looking forward to would be the rookies on the defensive line: Landon Jackson, Deion Walker, and TJ Sanders. Those three guys, will they push AJ Epinesa out? Another name is to add Javon Solomon to that list. Those kind of four guys. I know Sanders and Walker aren't the same position as Epinesa, but really Solomon, Jackson, can they push Epinesa out? And then Walker and Sanders and how they look, because I think that's just, again, so important, because the main, we just talked about the offensive side of the ball and how they've come up short, but the defensive side of the ball has struggled, specifically the defensive line in those big games as well. So I think it's seeing that youth kind of come together, see how they gel, look through training camp reports. I'll probably go to a couple of the practices to take a look for myself. But that's really the big thing for me. Cornerback 2 I'm interested in, but I feel confident because they've added 2 depth pieces that have done it with Sean McDermott here. And they also have, obviously, a first-round pick in Maxwell Hairston. So that'll be interesting, but I think really the big focus for me is the defensive line, those rookies and the second-year players in Javon Solomon, see what they can bring, and if they can provide any spark. And, Ed Oliver, again, he's another interesting conversation. But he's a guy that I think TJ Sanders, if he shows, some promise, that I think by the end of the year could be pushing, pulling some snaps away, I should say, from Ed Oliver, if he can really show some pop. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic throughout the season. But yeah, I really just want to see this D-line, how they gel, how they're coaching them. Can they develop these guys? Can Rousseau show any signs of, they talked about him being more physical. Will we see that? So just the defensive line unit as a whole, but specifically those 4 rookies, or 3 rookies in the Javon Solomon.
I gotta be real. There's really nothing I really care about heading into this summer. I mean, we
Lindy Ruff.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, that's what I really do care about. I'm focused on the Sabres draft and off-season moves right now, but this ain't a Sabres podcast, so.
So Mike said he's gone.
Mike's like, yeah, Sabres talk. I'm going.
Mike said, no, I'm only concerned about the Sabres, so see you guys later.
Yep, absolutely. How about you, Jake? What are you looking forward to?
I got so excited. I'm sorry, guys. I got so excited on that I swiped right out of here. You get me talking about the Sabres. I get fired up. Excited.
14 years. Oh.
Yeah, everybody's like, most Sabres fans are like, I don't want to talk about this. They're depressing. I'm like, let's go. Let's fix this.
I've actively avoided thinking about the Sabres for like 2 months. So.
The Sabres remind me of when I was playing like NCAA basketball, like 2K5, and I'm starting at like Albany and I'm building them into like a national championship contender. Like that's what I want to do with the Sabres. Like I want to be the guy turning them around. I need them to do my ideas. But really this summer with the Bills, since I guess we are a Bills podcast, as you guys reminded me, there's nothing I care about. I literally don't care about anything. The training camp, I don't care about. Preseason, I don't care about.
James Cook, Mike? Do you know where he's there?
I hope James Cook comes back. I hope he doesn't hold out. I guess that'd be one thing I'd be paying attention to. And then if I was going to answer the second question, the second thing, it'd be I want to see how Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore look. The defensive lines, I'm not really too concerned about because what am I going to learn in training camp with these guys? They're going up against each other. So if they're dominating the Bills' offensive line, I guess that could be something positive to take away. But we're not even going to have answers into the regular season. Michael Hoyt and Ojanobi are gone the first 6 games, and I think Michael Hoyt plays a big role in this defense this year, at least as a rotational piece. So I don't think we're going to have a full answer from them. With the rookies, are we really expecting TJ Sanders or Landon Jackson or Deion Walker to really have big impacts right away? I'm probably not. They're rookies. It's probably going to take some time. They're probably not going to have a huge snap rotation right away. So as much as I want to see how they perform, I don't really know if we're going to see much from that perspective. When does Joey Bosa come back on the field? How long are they going to hold him out for? That's something that I would want to pay attention to, but I don't know if we're really going to know anything about Joey Bosa that's substantial until preseason and maybe even late August if he's practicing fully and ready for games. The linebackers, they are what they are. Secondary, I guess it'd be interesting to watch Harrison. How does he look in one-on-one and rush? And then offensively, it's really Curtis Samuel versus Elijah Moore. Is that a battle, or is that just my outside perception? Is Elijah Moore really going to be inside-outside, versatile receiver? Is Curtis Samuel fighting for a spot on the team? Outside of that, like nothing really matters to me because I feel like this roster is so close to what they were last year. I already know what this team is. Like in my head, I already know what the 2025 Buffalo Bills are. I've already awarded them the division championship for the 6th consecutive year. I have playoff tickets already reserved. So the money is already saved up for January. I'm looking forward to going to the AFC Championship for the first time in my life this year when they host it at Highmark Stadium in the final game ever there. Actually, to be honest, I'm already looking forward to the Thursday night opener at New Highmark Stadium in September 2026. So actually, I'm just going to skip this entire season. Wake me up a year from now when we're talking about how we're going to defend the first Super Bowl in Bills history.
Mike, you just said you didn't care about anything and then named off like 35.
I know. Besides that.
Outside of that.
That's the irony of everything right there. So,
comedy. All right, I'm looking forward to Hard Knocks more than anything. I can't wait to see that because now knowing that McDermott, like the report about McDermott, like being super pissed about them having Hard Knocks, makes me more excited to see like how the Bills navigate this very invasive process that they want no part of having. Like it's going to be interesting to see like what the Bills want to push. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of Josh Allen and a lot of Bills fans. I'm sure that's just going to be that, and everyone's going to be happy about that. That's like the broad appeal of this whole thing. But very interested now, more interested knowing that the coaching staff was not thrilled with the NFL's decision to select the Buffalo Bills. So I think it's going to be great TV for us, though, and I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Bills fans get the spotlight because I think they will put a nice spotlight on Rochester and everything there.
100%. Bring the garbage plates will be hopefully it's got to be a garbage plate episode or something.
Garbage plates versus wing competition.
Yeah, something.
Just have them coming up. Something. We got to have some Buffalo Rochester like.
Food. We got to have
flavor.
Some food.
Yeah,
gotta have some food. Buffalo food.
The only thing I hope they don't do for Hard Knocks is I hope they don't do this typical the Bills like bring their most noted like fans from like Buffalo and do a focus on them because that stuff has gotten old. Like to be real, like not that like I don't blame any of the fans that like take part. Like obviously I would do the same thing if they reached out to me, but like it does seem like whenever there's something focused on fans, they go to like the same 10 to 15.
Yeah, for sure.
Every single time. Like what I like about Rochester and St. John Fisher is that kids that don't have the opportunity to really go to games have a chance to be up close with their favorite players. Families get to spend time together. And it's definitely a more family-friendly environment. So I hope if the Bills do have input, rather than manufacture fan things at camp, let it just be authentic and not try to make something that it's not. Because we have seen a lot of this manufactured fan stuff with the Bills in recent years. But I do think there's a lot of just authenticness that kind of gets skipped. And I would like to see just average Joes having a good time with their 6-year-old or 7-year-old get some spotlight as well.
If it's not manufactured, I don't know if it'll make it on HBO, but we'll see. Walk around the Bills tailgate. I don't know, man. You don't know what to expect. So
get Maniac with a press credential asking something crazy at a press conference and getting a laugh from a player or something like that. Get that. Get Trainwreck some HBO love. That's what I want on Hard Knocks this year. Get us all on there. We're willing to do what it takes. If you want to manufacture anything, call Trainwreck Sports and we'll manufacture something.
Yep. We're hit our line, HBO. We're open. Hit the DMs. I'm excited though. I really think there's going to manufacture some drama for sure. The wide receivers are going to be where they go to drama. I think they go right to the wide receiver room for all the camp. I think they're going to be like, everything we just talked about? Is this group good enough for Josh Allen? Who's going to be the star of this group? Like, I bet you they do profiles on every one of them. Keon is going to be big time for HBO. I'm sure he's going to be a big focus.
They're going to focus on Keon. They're going to
But that's the sexy position battle to focus on. You know what I mean?
They're going to talk to Mar Hamlin. They're going to milk that.
True.
They'll talk about defensive line. Joey, especially if Joey Bosa's missing it in the beginning, they'll be like, well, Joey Bosa was the big free agent signing this offseason. Yeah. And then they show him with some booter on a bike.
He's on the bike.
He missed the first 10 practices, but Javon Solomon is looking good in his place. Could he be a player that steps up on the Bills this year? But he's also battling Landon Jackson, another young Bills defensive end. And then it's just going to be Josh Allen for the next 30 minutes being like, yeah, this guy's MVP. This guy married an actress, an Oscar nominated, actually maybe Oscar winning. I don't know Haley Steinfeld's bio. And it's just going to be more Josh, and then more Josh on top of it, mixed in with some fans. And
you're right.
And then inevitably they're going to be like, this team has been great for the last 5 years, but is this the year they finally find a way to get past their nemesis, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs? And that's when I would love to have Chris Collinsworth say Patrick Mahomes, and that would make
You sounds like you're working on it for HBO already hit you up, Mike. Guys, they already were in your DMs.
We have a big announcement. I'm actually leaving Trainwreck for HBO.
The new Liev Schreiber, Mike Bunt. I love it. But yeah, I think that's very fair that Josh Allen's gonna be the focus of this show. Josh Allen pays the bills. We paid the bills here. So thank you all for joining the show. AJ, thank you and welcome again to Trainwreck Sports. We look forward to doing this many times as the Bills season, Sabres season kicks off everywhere else. So shout out to AJ. He'll be along the train. Shout out to Mike Bunt. Thank you for joining along. Jake Micah signing off here. Thank you to our sponsor, Picasso's Pizza. We paid the bills. Have a great night, folks.